Yo, what's up everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video, I'm going to give you my top stardoms and situms for Week 12 of the 2021 fantasy football season. We're going to start with my stardoms, then move on to the situms, and I'm going to go position by position, beginning with the stardoms. So I have 3 stardom quarterbacks. The first couple are a little bit more higher tier guys, and then I'm going to talk about someone who isn't really someone that we've been talking about much this season, but I think he will be solid down the stretch and in Week 12. But we're going to start off by talking about Tom Brady, quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm sure if you have him on your team, you're probably starting him already, but this is just some further reinforcements that I do expect big things out of Tom Brady this week against the Indianapolis Colts. You see his point totals on the year. He's been pretty much amazing every week other than the game he returned to New England. And in terms of points allowed to fantasy quarterbacks on the season, the Colts currently rank 7th according to this chart on Fantasy Pros. And just in general, I think the Buccaneers, they're probably going to more so win this game through the air, I would guess. Leonard Fournette could have some success, but I really think the Buccaneers are going to air it out a little bit in this game. My second quarterback stardom is going to be Jalen Hurts, quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. He has been nothing but amazing all season long. He's been so consistent. And in Week 12 against the New York Giants, I do think that this is a game where he could be awesome for fantasy. He runs the ball, and in fantasy that is so valuable. And I know in one league, in a 2-quarterback league, I have Patrick Mahomes on bye, and I somehow ended up with Mahomes and Josh Allen in that league. So instead of Mahomes, I'm throwing Jalen Hurts into the lineup, and I feel super confident about this start, putting Jalen Hurts in the lineup. Our third and final stardom quarterback is going to be Cam Newton of the Carolina Panthers. So I like Tom Brady and Jalen Hurts as high to mid quarterback ones. Cam Newton I like as a low to mid quarterback one. He just recently signed with the Carolina Panthers in Week 10 in a part-time role near the goal line. He got in there and rushed a touchdown in. He also had 4 pass attempts in that game, threw one of them in for a touchdown. So that was awesome. He got the start in Week 11 against the Washington football team, and he put up 26.2 points per the Fantasy Pros scoring format. And while you might be saying, well, the Washington football team, that was a great matchup. Their defense hasn't been good this year. Well, in Week 12, he gets another great matchup with the Miami Dolphins. And if you look at this chart on the season, they're giving up the 3rd most points to quarterbacks. So Cam Newton back with the Panthers. He did great last week in a great matchup. He runs the ball quite a bit, and I expect him to do great in this matchup as well. I like him as a low to mid quarterback one. Next up, we have a few stardom running backs to talk about, and one of my personal favorites this week is David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears. In Week 12, he gets the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving, which if we take a look at this chart here, we'll sort it by running backs, go to the Lions, and they're currently on the season giving up the 4th most points to running backs. And it's I'm making him a stardom because he was injured for so long. He came back, had a good game for fantasy, but not great. Then he had the bye week. Then in Week 11, 7.2 points at half PPR, which is the scoring format I'm going to be going off in this video. Not spectacular, right? But in Week 12, I'm expecting him to see plenty of volume and do a lot with the work that he receives on Turkey Day. Like I said, I like David Montgomery as a low running back one this week on Thanksgiving Day. Next up, we got Myles Sanders, running back of the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a guy who I have been saying to buy low on, whether it was coming off of his injury before the New Orleans Saints game, and even before that game, I said, he might not have the best game for fantasy in a tough matchup against the Saints. You can even buy low on him after that Saints game if he has not a great game for fantasy, which is what ended up happening. But long story short, I like Myles Sanders this week, and I like him for pretty much the rest of the season. In Week 12, he gets the New York Giants. Last week against the Saints, even though the fantasy point total wasn't really there, his first game back from injury, he saw his season high in total carries. He didn't see much work in the passing game, only 1 target, didn't catch it. But this team is committed to the run. I think Myles Sanders is their lead back. He did have some ball security issues last week, so if he does lose the ball in Week 12, I could see him maybe being taken off the field. But as long as that doesn't happen in this matchup with the New York Giants, who are currently on the season giving up the 5th most points to fantasy running backs, I expect big things out of Myles Sanders. And I like him as a nice, solid running back to play with a little bit of upside because he always has that big play ability. Our next stardom running back is going to be Antonio Gibson, running back of the Washington football team. Against Tampa Bay, he had a surprisingly good game based on the matchup. That was in large part because the Washington football team was able to get to a lead. So he was able to see a lot of volume, and he got in the end zone twice. Then in another tough matchup against the Carolina Panthers, he saw that same volume, was more efficient with it in terms of yards per carry. He just didn't get in the end zone. But in week 12, he gets a great matchup with the Seattle Seahawks. And you might be thinking, maybe the Seahawks get a lead and the Washington football team is not able to run the ball with Antonio Gibson as much as they have in the last couple games. And that is always a risk with the Washington football team. Once they are down and they move to more of a pass-heavy game script, a lot of times Antonio Gibson will come off the field and we'll see a little bit more of their pass-catching specialist, J.D. McKissic. But against Seattle, I don't think Seattle is going to blow out the Washington football team. Seattle has really not been that good as a team this year, so I think Washington can at least make this game competitive. And in addition to not being that good of a team in terms of just winning games, the Seattle Seahawks are giving up the third most points to running backs in all of fantasy on the season. This is not the Legion of Boom. This defense is not doing that great this year. So Antonio Gibson, while he does have a little bit of risk, if the Seattle Seahawks get a lead and the game script makes it so he's not able to get a ton of volume on the ground, that's kind of just what you have to do with Antonio Gibson. So in this matchup, in a game that I think could be competitive, you got to start Antonio Gibson, in my opinion. I like him as a solid running back too. The next running back stardom that I like this week for week 12 is A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. In week 12, he gets the LA Rams, and I must preface this by saying this is only a stardom if Aaron Jones, their usual starting running back, is not active. I don't think he will play. So if he doesn't play, A.J. Dillon will be the lead running back once again. So in week 10, he saw a ton of volume. He got in the end zone twice in that game, put up 25.8 half-point PPR points. And then week 11 against the Minnesota Vikings, it was a solid game, 11 for 53 on the ground. He saw 6 targets, caught all 6 of them for 44 yards, 12.7 half PPR points. Solid game. Now he gets the LA Rams. And honestly, while you might be scared of the Rams defense, just based on the volume and the offense and the back-to-back shootout, super high-scoring game that this has the potential to be, I think you have to play the starting running back for the Green Bay Packers. And he's a talented player. The Rams defense doesn't really scare me that much. I'm not really sure where they rank in terms of total points given up to running backs. So either kind of middle of the pack, but they have given up some games to running backs on the year. So I like A.J. Dillon this week quite a bit in a game that has the potential to be very high scoring. And again, this is only if A.J. Dillon is the lead running back with Aaron Jones out. If Aaron Jones does play, I think you probably still can flex A.J. Dillon, but that big upside really does go down. But if A.J. Dillon is the lead back, I like him as a low running back 1, high running back 2. And our final running back stardom is Melvin Gordon of the Denver Broncos. So he's been really solid all season long. He's been splitting carries with Javonte Williams for the most part, splitting work. But he's seeing some pretty solid volume on the season. And he also appears to be their goal line running back. He has the ability to score a touchdown on any given week. So coming off of the bye week, he gets the LA Chargers, which is both a great matchup and it is also a revenge game. So Melvin Gordon used to be on the Chargers. Now he gets to play them. Has he played them yet this year? No, he hasn't. So this is his game back for the season. This is his first game back on the year. Who knows what to expect in this one, but I expect good things. On the season, the Chargers are giving up the second most points to running backs. So I think the opportunity is there for him. Obviously, with Javonte Williams in town in that backfield, it really comes down to who's going to get the work. But I think Melvin Gordon has a little bit higher probability to get in the end zone, and I really like this revenge game narrative. I know it is just a narrative, but there is something to be said about that revenge game factor. So he's been solid for fantasy. It's a great matchup. There is a revenge game. I see no reason to take him out of your lineup, and I'm starting him with confidence as a low running back 2 with a little bit of potential for more if he's able to get in the end zone. Now moving on to the stardom wide receivers for week 12, I'm going to talk about 2 players on the same team, and that's going to be Chris Godwin and Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I said I like Tom Brady this week. He has to throw it to somebody. And with Antonio Brown doubtful as of this recording for that game, I think Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are smash plays this week. They've both been great for fantasy, And with Antonio Brown not active the last few weeks, it's been a little bit more predictable to say, okay, Tom Brady is going to have to throw the ball to Godwin and Mike Evans. So you see what Godwin has done lately. He has been fantastic. We can take a look at Mike Evans here as well. I mean, needless to say, if you've been following fantasy, you know he's been great for fantasy. 28.5, 11.8, 13.2, 17.3. And the best part about this, out of everything I've talked about, is they get to play the Colts, who are giving up the 4th most points to to wide receivers, not running backs. They're giving up the 4th most points to wide receivers in fantasy football on the year. But if you look at fantasy points allowed to running backs, the Colts are giving up the fewest. So like I said with Tom Brady, I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to try to win this game by throwing the ball. And if the Colts are able to keep up with the Buccaneers offense, that only means that Tom Brady is going to be airing it out even more to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So I like them both as low to mid wide receiver ones. And any given week, they both have a ton of upside. And I only have one more stardom wide receiver to talk about, and that player is Michael Gallup of the Dallas Cowboys. So he missed the start of the season with injury. He played week 1, then missed a bunch of games with injury. So this might be a name you're not really familiar with. Even when healthy, he is normally the 3rd wide receiver on the team behind both Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. Well, Amari Cooper is going to miss this game because he's on the COVID list. And CeeDee Lamb, who suffered a concussion last week, it's looking like he's a game time decision as of this recording. I would be pretty surprised if CeeDee Lamb does suit up in this game. So if neither of those guys play, Michael Gallup becomes their number 1 wide receiver. If CeeDee Lamb does play, he becomes their wide receiver 2. So either way, I love the opportunity. And this is another Thanksgiving Day game, so that's pretty exciting. But yeah, either way, he's seeing a huge boost in opportunity. And even though he's playing the Raiders, who on the season, they've been pretty solid in terms of fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. This really has everything to do about the opportunity that he's getting on an offense that has any given week has the potential to put up tons of points in general on the scoreboard, which also means tons of fantasy points. Assuming Michael Gallup is their lead wide receiver, I like him this week as a low-end wide receiver 2. Now we're going to move on to my stardom tight ends before moving on to my sit-ems for week 12. And speaking of Dallas Cowboys, we talked about Michael Gallup. Now I'm going to talk about Dalton Schultz. So without Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, I think Dalton Schultz's value only goes up from there. I think he should see a healthy amount of targets in this game. There's really not much to say about Dalton Schultz. He's been pretty solid for fantasy, more so to start the year than lately. That could have something to do with Michael Gallup returning. It's really hard to say, but without Amari Cooper or possibly CeeDee Lamb, I think Dalton Schultz will have to be involved in this one. And if you look at points allowed to tight ends on the season, they're playing the Raiders, and they are currently tied for the most points given up to tight ends. So sometimes that stat can be a little bit fluky based on what tight ends you're playing. If you're playing Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews certain weeks, then you're obviously going to give up more points compared to teams that are playing teams that don't really use their tight end that much. But regardless, the Raiders obviously have given up some points at tight ends. So I really like Dalton Schultz to step up in this game with an injured receiving core, and I like him as a low to mid tight end 1. And you guys can probably sense a theme in this video, and that's that I like Tampa Bay players this week. Particularly, I like Tampa Bay pass catchers, and I like Tom Brady this week. And Tom Brady, you know who he likes throwing the ball to? What pass catcher he likes throwing the ball to? It's Rob Gronkowski, tight end of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is my next tight end stardom. When he is healthy, you play him for the most part, unless you have like Travis Kelce, right? What can I say? Like I said already, the Buccaneers, I think they're going to put up points, and I think they're going to do it through the air. In week 11 against the Giants, right back into the groove of things, 6 for 71 through the air. As a tight end, bro, that is fantastic. And that's without getting in the end zone. Gronk always has touchdown capabilities any given week. And against the Colts, I think the Buccaneers are going to be able to throw it on them. And the Colts are currently giving up the 4th most points to tight ends. So this week, I am starting Rob Gronkowski as a low tight end 1, but it comes with a ton of upside. If Tom Brady's touchdowns, instead of going to Mike Evans or Chris Godwin or whoever, if they go to Rob Gronkowski, he's got insane upside this week. And my final tight end stardom and my final stardom player on this list in general is going to be Noah Fant, tight end of the Denver Broncos. And listen, I get it. He's been up and down all season. He's had quite a few bust games, but against the Chargers, I kind of like him. I think, you know how I can see this game going? I think the Broncos are going to try running the ball against a vulnerable Chargers run defense. And when they pass the ball, I think they might target Noah Fant a little bit. So if you take a look at fantasy points allowed to tight ends, the Chargers are currently giving up the third most points to tight ends. When you look at wide receivers, they rank near the bottom of the league. So even though Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, they're talented players, they any given week can see targets and have production. I think Noah Fant is a sneaky play this week, especially if you have someone injured or on bye or whatever. And he has had big games this season. It's just kind of hard to predict when they're going to come. And at a position that's so weak, like the tight end position, if you're struggling, I think you can do a lot worse than Noah Fant. And I actually like him as a low tight end 1 this week. Now we're going to move on to the sit-ems. And I'm going to start with Ryan Tannehill, quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. He's my one and only quarterback sit-em. It's a brutal matchup against the New England Patriots. And he's missing pretty much all of his weapons on offense. So starting with the matchup, the Patriots are currently giving up the second fewest points to quarterbacks on the season. You saw what they just did to the Falcons offense. Shut them out completely. Matt Ryan didn't do anything. They picked off 3 different quarterbacks in that game. So the Patriots defense, they look really good lately. They're not really allowing any points to quarterbacks. This game is in New England, which makes it even worse for the Titans. And speaking of those missing weapons, it's looking like he's not going to have A.J. Brown potentially. And even if he does play, he's going to be playing injured. Julio Jones is on IR and is not going to be playing in this game. And then even Derrick Henry, their superstar running back, he's been out for a while. He is pretty much going to miss the rest of the season. And you might be thinking, oh, that just means he's going to throw the ball more. Honestly, I think that just means that the defense doesn't have to care about the run as much, which means that they can focus more on stopping Ryan Tannehill. So brutal matchup, lack of weapons. He hasn't really been that great for fantasy anyways lately. So coming off a game against the Texans where he threw 4 picks, I'm trying to avoid Ryan Tannehill. And to me, he's sort of like a low-end quarterback too. Now I'm going to talk about my one running back sit-em, and that's going to be Myles Gaskin of the Miami Dolphins. So if you look at what he's done this season, if we want to be kind of goofy, if it's an odd-numbered week, he has a good game. If it's an even-numbered week, he has a bad game. So 10, 6, 9, 0.3, 27, 2, 15, 7, 12.7, 5, 17. So if you follow the trend, he's going to have a bad game. Which, listen, that's obviously a weird thing to follow, but honestly, I'm not even kidding. I could see that coming to fruition the next couple of weeks, because in week 12, this week, he gets a tough matchup with the Panthers. So I could see this being a bad game, but then he gets the Giants, which is a much better matchup, more competitive. I could see him seeing volume in that game, but against the Panthers, long story short, definitely, oh, no way. And then he gets the Jets in week 15. Dude, this trend might continue for the whole season. We'll have to see what happens against Tennessee, but that's crazy. But that's not the reason I don't like him this week. The reason I don't like him this week in fantasy is because he gets the Carolina Panthers, and he's just been inconsistent all year for the most part. I don't know where the Panthers currently rank pretty low in terms of points given up to running backs, but they've just been a good defense pretty much all year. So to me, unless he somehow sees a ton of work in the passing game, this is a matchup to avoid for Myles Gaskin. I'd say he's a low running back 2 at best, but I would probably slide him in as a running back 3 in terms of rankings on the week. And my final 2 players on the sit-em list are going to be wide receivers. First, we're going to talk about Courtland Sutton, wide receiver of the Denver Broncos. And this isn't really a must-sit because he's such a talented player. He can always have a good game any given week. And he is always a threat to score touchdowns, which is weird to say because it looks like he's only scored 2 on the season. But yeah, he hasn't been great for fantasy lately since week 6. Since Jerry Jeudy returned from injury, he really hasn't done much for fantasy at all. And then in week 12, he gets the Chargers, which we talked about earlier. The Chargers are currently giving up the, 27th most points to fantasy wide receivers, which is 1, 2, 3, 6 fewest. Yeah, they're not giving up a ton of points to wide receivers. So in this game, I think the Broncos are going to try to run the ball, maybe find Noah Fant a little bit for some scoring opportunities and over the middle sometimes. But between Courtland Sutton not doing much lately, Jerry Jeudy kind of affecting Courtland Sutton's performance, and how I just see this game going, he's not a must sit, but I'm trying to avoid him. For me, he is a wide receiver 3, and I'm really not excited to play him. And the final player I'm going to talk about is Marquez Valdes-Scantling, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers. And listen, this is kind of what he's done for his career. He'll go out there, he'll catch a long bomb touchdown. People will pick him up, they'll play him, and he usually disappoints. Most weeks he needs a touchdown or a big play to be relevant for fantasy. He saw 10 targets against the Vikings, caught 4 of them. And I believe Allen Lazard was injured for that game, if I'm not mistaken. So he did catch the long bomb, the 75-yard touchdown. You take that away, he had a bad game for fantasy. Obviously, you can't just take away his big plays because that is part of his ability. But yeah, I'm not going to chase the points in a matchup with the Rams. For me, he is like I said, a touchdown or a big play dependent low wide receiver 4. Those are all my startums and situms for week 12. Now I'm just going to quickly recap our calls from week 11. So at quarterback, I said I like Ryan Tannehill as a low quarterback 1. He finished as the quarterback 17. So that was not a good call on our part. The Texans really just annihilated the Titans for some reason. I did also say, though, that I liked Tua as a mid to high quarterback 2, and that was a good call. He finished as the quarterback 12 on the week. Oh, now we got to move over to running back. We'll go over to half PPR because that is the scoring format I go off of. So last week I said I liked James Conner as a low running back 1, and he finished as the running back 8 overall on the week. So that was a solid call on our part. A.J. Dillon, I liked him as a low running back 1, filling in for... what's his name? Aaron Jones. I almost forgot his name somehow. And he actually finished as the wide receiver, the running back 13 on the week. I thought he would have been lower than that, but he had a solid game, and I guess it was almost a running back 1 finish, so that was a nice call. David Montgomery. This was not a great call. He finished as, I said I liked him as a high running back 2. He finished as the running back 27 on the week. 7.2. You want more out of him, but like I said, I like him this week against Detroit. And sometimes, players just don't have the best games. I liked Leonard Fournette last week as a low running back 1, a high running back 2. And he was a running back 2, running back 17, 10.4 points on the week. I was hoping for a little bit more, but you know what? He did all right. I also said I liked Myles Gaskin last week. I don't like him this week. I liked him last week, though. In that matchup with the Jets, I said I liked him as a low running back 2, and guess what? He finished as the running back 9 on the week, finished as a running back 1, so that was a nice call on our part. I said I liked Mark Ingram filling in for Alvin Kamara. What did I have him ranked as? A mid to low running back 2, and he was a high running back 2. He was the running back 14 on the week. So we had a lot of good calls last week, actually. This was not one of them, though. I said I liked Jeff Wilson if he started for Elijah Mitchell, which he did. I liked him as a low running back, too. He saw a lot of volume, just didn't do much with it. Running back 31 on the week. That's not going to get it done. Moving on to wide receiver. I should probably go to wide receiver if I'm looking for wide receivers. Control F. Well, there he is. Jalen Waddle. So he was one of my startums. I didn't have too many. I had 2 stardom wide receivers. The first one was Jalen Waddle. I said I liked him as a mid wide receiver 2. He finished as a high wide receiver 2, almost a wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 13 on the week with 16.6 half PPR points. We love to see that. And then I probably do A period J. There we go. I said I liked A.J. Brown as pretty much a must-start player. I had him as a mid wide receiver 1 with a ton of upside. And I don't know if he left the game early or not, but he just didn't do much. He finished as a wide receiver 39, 7.3 points. I know he is currently injured, so I don't know if did he leave early? I don't know. Can we find that out? Did he leave early? Yeah, it says he did leave with an injury. So, not really my fault. He would have done great if he didn't leave, right? But we'll just go with that. And then at tight end, I had 1 stardom. And that was my man, Mike Gesicki. I liked him as a mid tight end 1. He finished as the tight end 16, 7.5. So he didn't meet my expectations, but that's still a usable tight end at a position that's, not the best from week to week. Now moving on to the sits of last week, I only have a few. Carson Wentz, I didn't like him as anything more than a low quarterback too, and that's what he finished as, only 10 points. It was probably good if you did not play him. And I also said to sit Taylor Heinicke. I liked him as nothing more than a low quarterback too, just like Carson Wentz. Against the Panthers defense, I didn't expect him to do well. Well, he made me eat my words. He finished as the quarterback 7 on the week with 23.14 points. Unexpected, but Taylor Heinicke, he can do that sometimes. And they keep forgetting to change the position when I switch positions here. But my one running back sit-in was Devin Singletary. I liked him as a low to mid running back 3, and he was just barely a running back 3. He goes 1 to 12, 13 to 24, 25 to 36, if I did my math right there. So just barely a running back 3, almost a running back 4. He only had 4.3 points. So yeah, that was a good call. And yeah, we had a lot of good calls last week, guys. And I forgot to change the position again. Wait, did this not change? Hold on. Okay, so I was in I think once I went back to quarterback, it went back to standard instead of half PPR. But Devin Singletary, pretty much the same thing, 5.8 points. And then T.Y. Hilton. Guys, if I forget to change, well, I mean, the video's over now. This is the last player we have to recap. I kept forgetting to change it. I said I didn't like T.Y. Hilton in a brutal matchup with who did he play? The Bills? Yeah. And it was the Jonathan Taylor show. T.Y. Hilton only had 3.6 points, so that was a good call. So we really didn't have that many bad calls. So last week, I would say we did really, really well. And I'm hoping we can do even better in week 12. All right, guys, that's going to do it for my stardoms and sit-ins for week 12 of the 2021 fantasy football season. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content, and good luck in week 12.